So we're going to go into some more specifics, but so say you've done your soft tissue work, you've worked on those things. Now we have to use that range of motion. You have a little more range of motion in those muscles. The muscles are a little more relaxed. So what are you going to do? You have to use that range of motion, or else the body's just going to say, great, this is awesome, I'm just going to go back to right where I was before. Because your body never wants to change. Your body is just really trying not to change, because changing takes energy, and energy, you know, you might need that energy because a dinosaur could be walking down the street in any moment. The body still thinks, it's funny, it is funny, but the body still thinks this way. It still thinks that there is impending danger. It's why, you know, it's all about survival. So we have to use this new range of motion. So what we're first going to do is we're going to do some corrective mobility exercises. You can call it either one, I've heard it called both. And these are exercises that you're going to do to improve a very specific movement pattern. So when we're talking about shoulders, it's frequently going to be kind of that back and down shoulder blade motion. That's what we're trying to feel and correct a little bit. There's usually going to be very little loading on these exercises. Almost always there'll be just body weight, but every once in a while you might use a band, something like that, or a very light weight. That's usually how those go. These are all about feel. So that's really important. If you're doing these exercises and you're not concentrating on how they feel and what they're supposed, and you don't know what you're supposed to feel, they're just pretty much useless. You have to really pay attention to how these things feel, because you're trying, if you don't know how to feel these movement patterns, then you're not going to know if you are, you know, kind of expanding on that. You're not going to know to feel if you're in good posture or bad posture or good movement or whatever. And again, you're focusing on a very specific movement pattern. And there is some gray area, you know, when we talk about corrective mobility exercises as opposed to strengthening exercises. Because for some people, what might be a strengthening exercise might be a mobility exercise. And it kind of goes back and forth. And it depends on each person, what they have going on, how strong they are, how mobile they are, all these kinds of things. But the key with strengthening work, and we'll talk more about this in a second, is if you are using good form, which you always should be when you're doing strength training, then strength training itself is corrective. So you will be teaching yourself a good, positive movement pattern with strength training, even if there's other things you're trying to accomplish with that exercise. Whereas if it's just a mobility exercise, you're really just trying to mobilize it. It's not really trying to strengthen it necessarily. But you do have to strengthen it. So after you've done your soft tissue work, so you have a better range of motion. You've done your mobility exercises now, so you know what it's supposed to feel like. Now you have to strengthen it, because you have to progress these patterns so that when you're under stress, when you're tired, you want to be able to make sure you're not falling into those old habits again. So you can't stop. You have to keep moving this forward until you get strong in these patterns. And it's like reading. So, you know, at first we have to figure out what an A sounds like, and then we can say cat. You know, and that's the beginning of this process. And then you keep progressing it, and then you can say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Because you learn how to read and you keep going, and they're happy about that. But if you just kind of stop at cat, then you never get to that point. And he's a very cute kid. All right, so the difference between corrective and strengthening, again, is it's a blurry line. But again, and this is a really important point, which is why I'm repeating it. All training should give a corrective effect. So when you're doing something in the gym, any exercise, know what you're supposed to be feeling, know why you're doing it, so that you have a much better chance of getting what you're trying to get when you keep these things in mind. Nothing in the gym is there just to kind of blast through and then just kind of go on. So some specifics. And obviously this is very general. If you want more specific based on what you have going on, you can come up to me afterwards, or we can set aside a time in the fitness center to go over some more specific things. But I'm just going to talk about some generalities right now. First thing is breathing, and this really does apply to everyone. So if you have a lot of stress, or you're in that, again, that hunched over position, you're very likely going to be breathing mostly up here, not here, which is where you want to be breathing. Okay, and it's because of posture, stress, all this is tight, and it's kind of a circle. It's like, are we breathing that way because we're stressed, or are we stressed because we're breathing that way? Because again, if you're breathing up here all the time, the body is alerted. I mean, there's a reason that we can breathe up there. It's because, again, survival. It's like, if you don't know if a tiger's going to jump out at you, you're going to be, ready to go. Not too many tigers here. There's some deer, but they're not going to jump out from behind the bush. So the breathing is the body's biggest signal that it's okay to calm down and relax. So it's a very important point. If you got those tight shoulders, and I say this in our classes more times than I can count, that breathing is really crucial. Take that breath, bring those shoulders into a good position. It's all related. Okay, the deep breathing teaches us to relax. Okay, and then we go into our mobility work. So again, we're trying to establish an improved range of motion with the movement that we're going to be doing. And you have to work at this. And again, I'm going to emphasize this point as well. Whatever you're doing here, the form has to be perfect. And that starts before the exercise even begins. Getting into a position, getting into a good position, making sure that you are in a good spot to start from. So I love this exercise. I'll show you a quick video of it. And you'll notice I barely move. That's the entire exercise. And all I'm trying to do there is just practice that movement of that shoulder blade retraction on the ground. You can do this in standing positions as well, but I'm just showing this is a mobility exercise that is just working on that very specific shoulder blade retraction movement, where you're just lying on the ground and very lightly pressing your elbows into the floor. And from there, strength. So for shoulders, pulling tends to be a very, very healthy movement. And again, not only is it strengthening these movement patterns, but it's kind of teaching them as well, once you kind of know what they are supposed to feel like. The key here is understanding that pulling is not an arm exercise. It is an upper back exercise. So you have to keep your shoulders down and use those muscles. And here's a video right here. So you'll notice I start in good form. Notice my shoulders are not coming up. And then, oh boy, that's ugly. And watch that again, because it's really important. Go back to that. The difference. And just look at the shoulders, look at my neck and my head position. And when I start to come up, notice how my head kind of kicks forward there. It's like nodding forward. So what I say a lot in our classes also is find a spot, look at that spot, don't take your eyes off that spot. That is because when you're jamming your shoulders up, your head's coming forward and down, you're going to lose that spot. If you can keep your eyes on that spot, your shoulders tend to have a much better chance to stay where they're supposed to stay. Okay? And this is one of my recent blog posts. I did all these exercises that I've shown you here. I expand on them a lot more, and I go through the whole progression of kind of how to do that. And again, we can walk through that anytime you want, but I don't want to. Here would take a little while. So quick review. So things to work on. Obviously, postural awareness is very important. Soft tissue work, again, that's the rolling out. And if you haven't done this before, it's like a massage. It's essentially you're giving yourself a massage with these tools, okay? So if you have a masseuse that you go to, they can do it too, but you can do it at home. You can do it every day. You don't have to necessarily pay for some of these things. And it's really important. It's going to be uncomfortable if you haven't done it before, but it really will pay off in the long run. And then you're going to be in a much better position to be able to take advantage of the breathing and the strengthening exercises and just the movement in general. And so much of this is just about it's breaking bad habits and establishing good ones. And I like to, when I think about habits, I like to think more in the terms of establishing good ones than breaking anything. I'm trying to get better at this. I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not trying to get rid of something. I'm trying to add something that's more positive. And that's how I look at it. Okay, so that's what I have on shoulders. And I'd love to hear any questions anyone might have.
Could you talk a little bit about the connection between lower back and shoulders, particularly when you're standing and walking?
Yes. That's a really good question. I mean, think about it, try to picture it. If you try to picture, if you're constantly kind of in this position, and I'm gonna exaggerate it, like this is pretty bad. But there are people that can be that bad, but even just a little bit, like look, if you just kind of look at from here to here, and look at this, like forget looking at up here, look at my lower back. So my lower back is supposed to be in a neutral position. Again, we're talking about we want stability in the low back, which means it's not really supposed to move all that much. So if I'm here, then all of that weight is coming right down my thoracic spine and boom, sitting right there. And over time, that's gonna, first of all, it's gonna lock up my hips, which means again, like, so my shoulders, so basically my thoracic's locked up, my hips are locked up. So all my movement has to come from here. And that's gonna create pain. Is that?
If I could just follow up. When I get in the positions as you were talking about, the bad positions, if I put my hands behind me while I'm walking, it seems to help, but I don't know whether it's a good thing to do.
Well, picture it, that's actually really good. So if you're here and you put your hands, what happens? You're pulling your shoulders back. That straightens out your back. So you don't really, you know, sometimes these moves are very subtle. I'm being very exaggerated, but it can really just be the difference from here to here. That can be a massive difference if you're talking about being in that position for a 2-hour walk or whatever, or all day, or whatever it is. So, does that answer your question?
Yep.
Yeah. So just think of it like in terms of, think of how what you're doing is deviating from good posture. I'm going to try to go back and find the slide because go all the way back because this is really important. There we go. Just look at neutral position right there and the differences there and there and all of the movement that has to come from that low back if everything else is locked up.
I tend to curl up at night into a ball,
In
which is a
bed?
very comfortable position for me to go to sleep. But I've often wondered if it's a terrible position for posture.
That's tricky. Sleeping positions are very tricky. We will always tend to wind up, I mean, we only have so much control over the position we have when we sleep. I would ask, and you know, how do you feel when you get up? Do you feel like you're refreshed? Do you feel like you're just all stiffened up? Like, how do you feel?
Like, oh, heck, I wish I were back in bed.
I want to get some more sleep. But how does your back feel? How do your shoulders, like, does your posturally speaking? Like,
I really don't notice it so much when I get up. But if I start, you know, doing dishes or working around the house, then my lower back kills me.
okay. So I would think, first of all, and this is very common, what I would do in those situations is take a second, and usually when something happens and we feel pain, we just, like, the body's just like, it just freezes, you know, you just kind of get out of it. Like, if you're in a position, this hurts, oh, no, you want to get out of it, and that's the natural reaction. I want to sit with it for a second. Like, when you're doing something and you feel some pain in your back or your knee or wherever, just take a second there and don't move, and just kind of note where the pain is and the position you're in, then you get out of it. And then you can start to see, okay, this position is no good for me, you know, whatever that is. So, you know, for back, when you feel lower back pain, most of the time it's going to be because you're either over flexed or overextended, one or the other, as opposed to being in that neutral position. So figure out where you are. So I would think if you're doing the dishes, you're probably hunched over the sink or, you know, or putting them in dishwasher or whatever, I mean, I don't know, but that's probably some version of what's going on. So at that point, take a breath, stand up nice and tall, do the strength, be howdy doody. Just take a breath and try to get yourself into some neutral positions and see how that feels. And you can kind of, at least you know kind of what feels good, what doesn't, and then you can start to work from there.
In the morning, I often will sit and read my computer or a book or whatever. Used to be newspapers and stuff, no longer. But anyway, and I realize that I'm sitting and looking down like this, and that doesn't seem to be like a good posture, but that's, and I sit in a rocking chair a lot,
Yeah.
straight
Yeah,
down.
if you're,
And even so, I'm,
yeah, when you sit for a while, there's nothing inherently wrong with sitting. Okay, sitting itself, it's just the amount we do it. Like if the body can do something, it's not necessarily bad that it can do it. It's just the amount we do it. So it's just like if someone stands all day long, they're gonna have some difficulties with their posture. It has to be a little bit of both. So yeah, so there's nothing necessarily wrong with sitting. It's just if you're sitting in this position for 2-3 hours, again, typing, reading, whatever, that's when the problems come in. So kind of notice kind of where you are and then go from there.
A lot of us have arthritis.
Mm.
Do these exercises make the arthritis less?
Arthritis is tricky. So I wouldn't say that nothing they're gonna cure it. The stuff that we talked about today is stuff that, generally speaking, is not gonna hurt anything, and very, very well may help. I can't say if it's gonna cure anything, but I am pretty confident saying it's certainly not gonna make anything worse. And I do think that things like breathing and just general movement patterns and mobility are always gonna be part of an answer, even if they're not the whole answer. So, yeah, but arthritis, I mean, stuff like that is pretty tricky.
Hi, Rich. I had a question about diaphragmatic, or a comment about diaphragmatic breathing. Years ago, I heard about how to do that, but I had a hard time getting the idea of breathing into your diaphragm until somewhere along the line, somebody I was working with said, imagine an accordion that you have, like an accordion back and forth, sideways.
Yeah.
And once I kind of got that, it seemed to make it easier for me to get into that full breath. So anyway, just somebody
Yeah,
might
that's
find this useful or not, but
Yeah.
it worked for me.
Well, that's good. I mean, sometimes with these things, you can say something a lot of different ways, but just you'll hear something one way, and it's like, oh, that really clicks somehow.
Yeah.
So that's great. If that works, that's a good visual.
I don't know. I think this is more general than it might sound. But I was talking to a resident. We are having to go up the steep hill because of the elevators. And coming down, I mentioned it seemed almost harder going down because using the walker, I was pulling like mad. My brakes aren't that good, but the point of it is, I could really feel the stress. He was using sticks, and he said the same thing about it almost being harder walking downhill. But which also brings up the use of devices, because some of you'll be better off if you have a walker. But I noticed that I can't do a good stride because my knees hit the seat, and it's a fight to keep from bending over. Bending over.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer to that is when you are going down a hill or downstairs, you're actually having to support more of your body weight than when you're going up. So it is harder in a lot of ways going down a hill or stairs or anything like that. So that's certainly not wrong. And the use of devices like walkers or canes or whatever, that's so individual, and I really wouldn't want to say anything. It's a very individual topic depending on what someone has going on. That it's kind of hard to make a general statement about it. But people use those things so they don't fall, which is going to be a much worse option. And falling's a worse option than, you know, if that's gonna be a concern, so. But that's something more to talk to your doctor and kind of see kind of where you are with those kind of things.